Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Stephen Kingcast, one man's musings on the works of Stephen King. Each week, I will review one entry in the bibliography of Stephen King in the chronological order of publication. Which brings us to this episode, which is a bonus episode that will be released on the same day as the third part in a three-part review of Stephen King's 1990 re-release of The Stand, the complete and unabridged edition. So what this episode is going to tie in the Stand into the larger Stephen King universe, specifically the Dark Tower series. So if you have not read the Dark Tower series, then I would not continue with this particular episode. I would come back later after you have finished the Dark Tower. So the first Dark Tower connection clearly is Randall Flagg. So if you have not done so already, I have talked about Flagg at length. I have spoken about Flagg in the Gunslinger review, the second part of the Gunslinger review, the Eyes of the Dragon review. There's a bonus episode in Eyes of the Dragon. I believe I spoke about Randall Flagg in the bonus episode of of It, as well as the Drawing of the Three episode and the bonus episode Drawing of the Three. So I have spoken about Flagg at length. I mean, and then of course there's all of the times I spoke about Flagg within the three-part review of the Stand, and next week's episode, Stand, the movie directed by Mick Garris. So I have spoken at length about Flagg. But Flagg, if you still don't know his connection to the larger Dark Tower universe, Randall Flagg is not just Randall Flagg. Randall Flagg is someone who was actually born by the name Walter Paddock, who sought out magic, and when he was a boy, he was traveling on the road. He wound up being raped, and from there, that kind of set him, as we are led to believe, down a dark path, which led him to seek out dark magic, and throughout the centuries his power amassed and grew and grew and grew, and at some point he became aware of the Dark Tower. He became aware of the being at the top, or not even at the top, but that was locked within the Dark Tower, the Crimson King, who is the antagonist throughout the Dark Tower series, and his motivations are never made clear within the Dark Tower, but he serves as an adversary to Roland the Last Gunslinger, who is our main character, and he has taken various guises throughout Roland's life to either discredit him before he has come of age so that he will not reach the tower, or has been there to tempt him away from the tower. So he has taken on the role of Martin Broadcloak early in Roland's life, and Martin Broadcloak was the right-hand man and advisor to Roland's father, who was the sort of king of Roland's kingdom of Gilead. And Roland's father, Stephen, was the din of the gunslingers, so he was the leader of the gunslingers, and his right-hand man was this magician who seduced Roland's mother and turned her against her son. And Roland discovered this because Flagg, under Martin, wanted him to discover it so that Roland would go off and take his gunslinger test, so to speak, earlier in his life, at a point where Martin thought that Roland wasn't ready, in the hopes that he would fail his test and then be sent west. And if he was sent west and he wasn't a gunslinger, then he wouldn't ultimately go on and pursue his destiny, which was to achieve the tower. Roland passed the test. Martin fled. At that time, we don't know what happened to Martin. But at some point, a character named Walter came traveling through. Walter was just Martin in a various disguise. Flagg traveled through Gilead at this time under the name Flagg, with two characters from Eyes of the Dragon hot on his heels. So let me stop now and talk a little bit about Eyes of the Dragon. He was Flag as we know him pretty much. He went by the name of Flag, and he was a magician in a kingdom known as Delane, serving under the rule of many, many kings and queens, amassing power as he went and just sowing chaos and just causing despair. The depiction of Flag in Eyes of the Dragon is very, very close to the depiction of Flag as we get him in The Stand. And upon the conclusion, he is bested by the characters in Eyes of the Dragon, and he runs away. And as he is chased through Gilead, the world of the gunslingers. When we first meet Roland, the last gunslinger, in the pages of the Gunslinger, the first line is "The man in black fled across the desert, and the gunslinger followed." So the first character really that we meet or is introduced to is the man in black. Those are the opening words, the man in black, who happens to be Randall Flagg. So he's the subject there, and the gunslinger, is in pursuit of him, and the man in black reveals himself to be Walter, the character who had traveled through Gilead. His name is Walter O'Dim, and he tries to have Roland basically corrupt his soul so that he won't be worthy of reaching the tower. This backfires in Walter's face. Roland continues. He receives a little bit of redemption, and then Randall Flagg, as we know him, pops back up in the pages of the Wastelands. He takes one of the antagonists from the Wastelands, the TikTok Man, under his wing. The TikTok Man then serves him much in the same way that Trash Can Man served him. He even actually has him say, "My life for you," and then we meet him again in the pages of Wizard in Glass. And ultimately, Flagg is undone in the pages of the Dark Tower when Roland's mutant son, Mordred, takes him out and kills him, which at the time drove me nuts. But now it makes, I think that's fitting, that a character this loathsome does not get his grand finale. He doesn't get his blaze of glory moment. He isn't in the main event because he doesn't deserve it. I think that's great. So that's Flagg, and I will definitely talk about Flagg in upcoming episodes. And as we get back into the Dark Tower, I'll definitely talk about Flagg. So this is not the end. This is not the end of Randall Flagg for us. Up next, we have the Burning Eye. Many characters, they describe a sensation of a burning eye in the night, searching for them. That's a reference to Tolkien and the Eye of Sauron, but at the same time, King repurposes it into his own lore later on with the Eye of the Crimson King. Furthermore, we have an eye in these magic stones that Flagg will give those that serve him, and just I don't think that at the time. I don't think at the time King knew that he was going to create a character named the Crimson King, but I think that it all kind of came from the same inspiration and wound up taking on another form in his works later on down the road, and we first meet the Crimson King that's in the pages of Insomnia. Number 3, Flagg's plans and the visions that people have of the Siege of Boulder is very reminiscent of John Farson. So John Farson is a character in the pages of the Dark Tower who led a rebellion against the gunslingers, and really what he's looking to do is to just sow dissent and cause chaos, which is very, very similar to Flagg's plans. And the world of the Stand is visited in Wizard in Glass, and I need to reread Wizard in Glass, and I will reread Wizard in Glass at some point, but I'm not quite sure if you read the unabridged edition, which came out in 1990, so it takes place in 1990, I believe that's what... I'm having a hard time trying to phrase. Basically, I don't know why I'm having a hard time trying to phrase this, but so... When Blaine the Mono dumps Eddie and Roland, Susanna, Jake, Oy, and Roland into Topeka, Kansas, the Topeka, Kansas that they're dumped into, it's one possible world among the multiverse, and it's a world that has been decimated by Captain Trips. So as far as I remember, it is a world of the Stand, not the world of the Stand, but it's still a really cool moment when you get to that point in the Dark Tower series and you say, oh my god, I know this place. Number 5 is My Life for You. When I guess after Stephen King re-released The Stand, I think that he started in his mind started to really see the connections here and what he could do with Randall Flagg. So it was no surprise that Randall Flagg winds up showing up almost immediately after in the Wastelands, and he comes into the Wastelands not like Martin or the Man in Black, not with some billowing cloak, less of a magician and more of the rhetorical ranger that he is right here. Yeah, he comes as, I don't remember, is it Faraday? I don't remember the initials RF, but I mean, he's coming over with the sort of rules that were established here in The Stand, which is that every time he takes a new alias, it has the initials RF. He'll later just say, you know what, I mean, this guy, I mean, the name Flagg is just so him, we're just going to call him Flagg, and so he kind of does away with the RFs, but he's Flagg. But so Flagg shows up in the Wastelands, and immediately he has the TikTok man who's lying there almost dying, and he makes him say "My life for you," and gives, which is a reference to the Trash Can Man, and he mentions the Trash Can Man. He doesn't call him Trash Can Man, but he does speak of him fondly still, and he talks about the end of The Stand. So that is a great Easter egg for Stephen King fans right there. And number 6 is Ka. I mean, this is huge. Ka is a wheel. Is one of the Dark Tower's most famous phrases, and it's thematically referenced here in the opening and closing titles of the book. The circle opens and the circle closes. The fact that Flagg emerges from the end of the book to wreak havoc and build a dark society in another location just reinforces the concept that it's all happened before and will happen again, and that functions as the heart of the Dark Tower books. Furthermore, at one point, the judge thinks the crow looking at him, seeming to grin. And it came to him with a dreamy, testicle-shriveling certainty that this was the Dark Man, his soul, his Ka, somehow projected into this rain-drenched, grinning crow that was looking in at him, checking up on him. So he just drops the bomb, Ka, right there, which is a huge connection to the Dark Tower. Now, King has often used the ideas of cycles and repetition. We've seen it in It. We've seen it in the Dark Tower series, like I said. And, here in The Stand, as Tom states, Randall Flagg never dies. He always exists according to God's Tom. He'll always wait for his time to come around again. King even ends the novel with the following 2 sentences. Life was such a wheel that no man could stand upon it for long. And it always, at the end, came round to the same place again. It's a theme that Roland Deschain would tell you was very accurate, and when you look closer at it, it renders the title and the point of the novel completely moot. I mean, just look at what King writes. Life is a wheel that no man could stand upon. I mean, basically, he's saying that it doesn't matter what happens in this book. It's all happened before, and as evidenced from the growing police force in Boulder, it's all going to happen again. That is a very bleak look at everything that goes down. That's a pretty pessimistic view on human nature right there, but it's pretty honest. And even still, King retains optimism, in the face of the growing family, with the representation of the growing family, with Stu and Franny and baby Peter. I mean, there is hope, but there's going to be hope against a growing darkness, and unfortunately that darkness is starting to grow in Boulder, which is such, a corruption of everything that they had worked for. And it's no, it's no surprise that over in Boulder, the darkness is starting to grow, and it ends with the Dark Man rising once again. So with the Dark Man still being out there, his presence is enough to just taint humanity and continue the same tropes over and over and over again. And that kind of pessimism is explored again, in much greater detail with the Dark Tower. So, spoiler alert, like I said, you shouldn't be listening to this if you have not read the Dark Tower. But I mean, the ending of the Dark Tower is a brutal ending for fans that were looking for redemption. There is a chance of redemption, but we don't get it right now. I mean, the ending is torture. The ending is hell, as Roland, after slaughtering his way through Midworld and our world and many other worlds, after being responsible, either directly or indirectly, with the deaths of everybody he loves, is not granted salvation in the concluding pages. He is granted eternal life. He is stuck in the concept of Ka is a wheel, and he will be forced to continue going over and over and over again his brutal, blood-drenched life without conscious memory of the lives that he has lived before, but on some level knowing that he is damned, he is doomed if he doesn't change his ways. But because Roland is so single-minded and Roland is so focused and driven on, you know, his quest, and he's obsessive, those layers and those previous lives are buried so deep. They can't rise to the surface and take control of that obsessive nature that he has. So he's constantly forced to replay these awful blood-drenched actions that define who he is. But you know, Stephen King, as we know, does leave a little bit of hope in the form of a horn, which shows that there's a change. He has changed something, and it leads us to believe that every time he starts again on this quest and he's dumped back into the Mohaine Desert, where it begins anew, that he's a little better off, and he's making these incremental steps towards ultimate redemption, where hopefully he will choose life over death. So the ending of The Stand, in some ways, is the growing darkness. Clearly, also reflects with the end of the Dark Tower in that regard. Okay, guys. Like I said, I think that I spoke at length about the things that I typically would have reserved here in previous podcast episodes, specifically around Randall Flagg. This should be the Randall Flagg bonus episode, but I've already touched upon that. So if you still want more and you haven't gone through the other podcast episodes, feel free to go through the other podcast episodes. You can check out the Eyes of the Dragon. You can check out the Eyes of the Dragon bonus edition, Eyes of the Tower. So even if you haven't read Eyes of the Dragon, the bonus edition will probably satiate your Randall Flagg needs. You can head on over to the second part of the Gunslinger review. And in those two particular episodes, you'll get a lot of Randall Flagg talk and conversation and thoughts and musings. So I would strongly recommend you head on over there if you haven't done so already. All right, everyone. That is all that I have for now. So make sure that you head on over to iTunes if you haven't done so already. Like I always say, you know, the more subscriptions I get, the more reviews I get. It makes it more noticeable and prevalent in searches and in categories. So that would really help a lot get the Stephen Kingcast out there. And always feel free to write in. I've been getting a lot of emails lately, so I'm going to start reading them on air again. So, you know, keep the emails coming. I love it. It's great whenever I sit down and I check my inbox and I see a couple emails sitting there. I know that sometimes it takes me a while to get back to everybody, and I apologize. But keep them coming, and feel free to write in to stephenkingcast@yahoo.com. And if you have any time on your hands, please leave a review on any of the podcast platforms that you use to stream and listen to the Stephen Kingcast. Whether it be YouTube or Spotify or Apple Podcasts, leaving reviews will really help me out. And you can follow me on Facebook and on Twitter. No, you can't. Nope. You can follow me on Facebook and on Blue Sky and on TikTok and on Instagram
And I hope that you enjoyed this deep dive examination of the relationship between The Stand and The Dark Tower. If you still want more Stand content, don't worry, there's more coming. We're going to be looking at the conclusion of The Stand, and then I'm going to be looking at the adapted versions of The Stand, and then concluding with the publication of the anthology, It's the End of the World as We Know It, stories inspired by The Stand. So may you have long days and pleasant nights, and I'll see you around where MOON spells Stephen Kingcast.